Welcome to the Food Junkies podcast. Here, we aim to bring you the experience, strength, and hope of professionals working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. Our mission is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a recognized disorder. Here, we discuss all things recovery, exploring the many pathways people take towards abstinence in order to achieve a health-forward lifestyle. We hope to inspire you to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, and share your journey with others. And hopefully the message will spread.
Did you know that fatigue, brain fog, and constant snacking can sometimes be traced back to a mineral that most doctors never consider or measure properly? Welcome to the Food Junkies podcast. My name is Dr. Vera Tarman, and I am your host today, speaking with Dr. Carolyn Dean. Dr. Dean is a medical doctor and naturopath with over 50 years of experience in integrative and functional medicine. She received her MD from Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, Canada. She then got traditional training in nutrition, naturopathy, and Chinese herbal medicine, and has practiced in Canada, the US, and internationally. Dr. Dean has written more than 50 books on health, including The Magnesium Miracle, Detox Your Body, The Sugar-Free Plan, as well as other magnesium and mineral-focused clinical guides. Her focus is on magnesium deficiency, sugar toxicity, and yeast overgrowth, and how those contribute to fatigue, weight gain, and chronic cravings. So welcome, Dr. Dean.
Oh, thank you very much. And call me Carolyn.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Tell us what got you interested in functional medicine, especially after you were an established MD, and then after that, what got you interested in things like minerals, magnesium, etc.?
It did happen before I went to med school. My then boyfriend and now husband of 57 years, we traveled around America, ended up in LA in the 70s when it was all about dope, but I was all about nutrition. And I attended a lot of the nutrition conferences with people like Adele Davis, Pavel Arola, Jonathan Wright. It was quite amazing. So it opened my mind to health and lifestyle. And when we came back to Halifax, Nova Scotia, I went into a biology degree. And all of a sudden, I was in classes with pre-med students. And I was shocked. How were these young kids? By this time, I was in my mid-20s. And I thought, how can they don't know anything. So Vera, I marched over to the Dean of Medicine office at Dalhousie. And there I found my guidance counselor from high school who had told me I should be an executive secretary or a nurse. And here I was in the top 3 of the school in marks. I was vice president of the student council. I should be a nurse or a secretary. So I got myself into med school in the next semester. And I never got dissuaded from the fact that we need to look at our diet and our nutrients. And then when I went to Toronto for my internship, I began my naturopathic training. It was already in my genetic makeup to be a naturopathic type. And so I practiced 13 years in Toronto, more as a naturopath, but being able to order all the blood tests and this and that. Went to New York in the early 90s to do AIDS and chronic fatigue research using alternative medicine. Boy, I learned a lot there. But while there, I started to do some Manhattan television and got asked by Random House to write some books. They wanted me to write a book on magnesium. All of a sudden, I found out that I was the poster child for magnesium deficiency. So that's where it all kind of began, because you mentioned about nutrients and diet and all the rest of it, and we'll talk about it, but magnesium is necessary for 80% of known metabolic functions, for 600 to 800 different enzyme processes, and people aren't getting enough. So my whole thesis, I've written 3 books recently about sugar. I talk a lot about junk food and all the ultra-processed food business. But my thesis is we eat food to get nutrients. We eat them to get our calories too. But in order to make the energy we need from food, you go through the Krebs cycle in our little mitochondria. And what ends up as ATP energy is really Mg dash, which is magnesium, Mg dash ATP. You do not have any energy unless you have magnesium.
Tell us, what is magnesium? Give us a little primer on magnesium.
It's a mineral, and we know it in medicine as a laxative.
Yes.
So what happened, back to my personal story, when I found out I was magnesium deficient, I went out and got some magnesium capsules that were more than my 50 milligrams in my multiple, and straight away ended up in the bathroom because I got the laxative effect. So I wrote the magnesium book, and then 10 years, it's called the Magnesium Miracle. And I spent 10 years trying to find a vitamin mineral company to make a non-laxative magnesium. They just couldn't be bothered. They said, we're doing fine with what we've got. And what you have in the mineral industry is magnesium and mineral compounds. A compound is like a magnesium chloride or magnesium citrate, magnesium glycinate. The accessory to magnesium is another element that the body has to break apart. It's called dissociation in the bloodstream. The magnesium rides off into the sun. It rides off. The chloride rides off. But because magnesium is so hyperactive, it immediately joins back up to something. And it means that magnesium ion, it's actually in an ionic state, it doesn't have a chance to be fully absorbed.
And it's that extra element, that's what causes the diarrhea and the other gastric effects?
No, what it is that magnesium compound, because it's too big to be absorbed, it ends up just going through our intestines.
Got it.
And that becomes the laxative effect, the lack of absorption. So for 10 years after I wrote the book, I tried to find somebody, word get out, a chemist and I got together, and he made a non-laxative magnesium to the point where, with my headaches and twitching eyes and choking sometimes on supplements, heart palpitations, leg cramps, all magnesium deficiency symptoms. From not being able to take more than 100 milligrams of magnesium compound, I was able to take 1,200 milligrams of my non-laxative magnesium because it's in a stabilized ion form. It'll stay stable in this liquid bottle for years. So that's what I determined was the cause of so many conditions. In my magnesium books, the most recent one is Magnesium, the Missing Link. And I listed over 68 medical conditions that are treated with drugs, but could really be just magnesium deficiency. And that's pretty astounding.
Wow. Can you give me an example of some of the conditions that you're talking about?
Yeah, asthma. So in asthma, you get the bronchial tubes start twitching and tightening up and constricting.
Yeah.
Magnesium is necessary to relax the muscles, and it's necessary to allow the nerves to conduct energy. Calcium will come in and play with magnesium. So here's what happens. You've got a cell that wants to take some action. Magnesium will open up the ion channel and allow a small amount of calcium to go in and create the activity. And then it opens up and pulls out the calcium. If you don't have enough magnesium to do that, calcium can build up in these cells and hyperexcite them. So you get the hyperexcitability of anxiety, irritability, the body tenses up, the muscles can't relax, you don't sleep well, the muscles in the heart will be hyperexcitable and cause arrhythmias and palpitations. So magnesium is necessary to make muscles and nerves work properly. Anything to do with neuropathies and tingling. And I've had people who said, I think I've got MS because I've got all these nerve symptoms. and they start taking a good form, my form of magnesium, and their symptoms go away. It's really quite remarkable.
What is it that's making us not be able to absorb magnesium naturally? Because before we even knew what magnesium was, people were doing fine. So something has gotten into the way of our natural ability to get the magnesium that we need.
It's mainly access because 100 years ago, the
Yeah.
U.S. Department of Agriculture said we were probably getting 500 milligrams of magnesium in our daily diet. Now we're lucky to get 200 milligrams. That's the U.S. Department of Agriculture telling us that. And I was so concerned about diet, food input. When I moved to Maui, it's going on 18 years now, I got involved with the local farm, organic farm. And I fully fund them now because food is just so important. And I cannot eat off our fully organic biodynamic farm. And we put amendments in. After years of farming, you can't get the minerals out of the soil anymore unless you put tons of minerals back in. And we're not doing that. So we have to supplement.
So it's essentially the earth has been scorched of magnesium's capacity, like the Earth's capacity to feed us has been scorched.
Exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
it's burnt out. It's
Yeah.
burnt out. In the nutrition industry, and I know you know this, they focus on macromolecules. Oh, what's the protein? What's the carbohydrates and sugar? What's the fat content? And they really don't pay attention to the vitamins and minerals that are necessary to even metabolize those macromolecules. So you have people saying, you have to eat a lot of protein. And the opposite faction, oh no, animal protein is verboten. We just have to eat plants. But what everybody's trying to do is get nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. So I find that I take enough, and it's not horrendous amounts at all. I used to have 50 bottles of vitamins and minerals. You just need the basics, but you need them in absorbable forms. And when I do that, then I'm not as hungry because our hunger can be us trying to search for nutrients. That's what the ultra processed food study by, what was it? Was it Bell? I'm sorry, I forget the name. They had, I think, 20 people in a facility and fed one group ultra processed, and then they switched out and fed them a normal diet. And they said, oh my goodness, the ultra processed food people ate 500 more calories. What's going on? And at a conference, I said, you know what's going on? They keep eating to try to get the vitamins and minerals they need. They wouldn't listen to me. I was shouted down. So we've got a real problem with the macro people and the micro people, and they're not working together. And that in the literature, because the studies on nutrients, they try to treat them like drugs. They'll study one nutrient at a time, and they'll say, we can't see that this or that nutrient is curing cancer. So they create these big protocols, and they never come up with a conclusion. Just a simple example, vitamin D requires magnesium in order to be activated. And in the vitamin D studies, I've never seen them really address that. Oh, why do the vitamin D studies look so irregular? Why can't they all be the same if vitamin D is so good? It could be because they don't know what the magnesium content of a person's diet is.
Okay, so magnesium is an element that normally would come from the earth through farming, and we're not getting enough of it. You're suggesting to get something that's pure magnesium.
Exactly. Stabilizing magnesium as an ion for absorption, I think, is the real clue. But what we've got in the commercialization of dietary supplements is all these magnesium compounds.
Yes.
And in my Magnesium Miracle book, I do the chart where I put the compound and I say, how much even elemental magnesium is in these compounds. You've got 500 milligrams of a magnesium compound, but then you look down and say, oh, the magnesium part is only 50 milligrams out of 500. It's only 75. it is rarely above 75 milligrams in a compound. So you've got this false advertising, especially with magnesium L-threonate. They'll have a bottle that says, oh, here's 2,000 milligrams of magnesium L-threonate. And you think, oh man, I'm getting a nice high dose. You turn the label around. In order to get 144 milligrams, you have to take 3 capsules. And in my world, I needed 1,200 milligrams of magnesium to get rid of my constant heart palpitations. I would have to take, do the math, 10, 30 capsules in order to treat my problem. I would die in the bathroom.
You know that you needed 1,200 milligrams.
My REMAG, REMAG, is 300 milligrams for a teaspoon. So what I did when we were first manufacturing it and I was testing it out, I started with half a teaspoon and I kept slowly going up. It was an N equals 1 experiment. And at 4 teaspoons, I felt all my symptoms going away. But I was on it for a year. And after about a year, my symptoms were so much less. And I started to get a bit of laxative effect. Can you believe it? So my cells were saturated, and now I'm only taking about a teaspoon and a half, 450 milligrams throughout the day in a liquid so that I keep my cells saturated. The thing about minerals is the body really needs them throughout the day. When you take one shot if I took all my magnesium at once, I might cause a bit of laxative effect.
I see.
So yes, these compounds it's so deceptive because magnesium in any amount and any type is going to be beneficial. All the original studies on magnesium were done with magnesium oxide, which is a huge laxative, but there was a lady entrepreneur who had a magnesium oxide company, and she gave bottles of magnesium to all these researchers to do magnesium studies. So they said, okay, magnesium oxide, this amount, it'll get rid of all these symptoms. So any amount, even brain symptoms, taking magnesium oxide.
Like brain
also,
fog.
Yeah, you have a population that's very constipated. So the laxative effect can be helpful. Any amount of magnesium is going to be helpful. I usually end interviews and podcasts by saying, go to your cupboard. You most likely have a magnesium. Take it. Take small amounts throughout the day. If it's a capsule, open it, and you'll see the benefits. But if you want to go into the saturation point of taking magnesium, then you would investigate my REMAG.
I have magnesium in my house and I use it for its laxative effect. I use magnesium glycinate. I'm dissuaded by using too much because it also has a calming effect, which is great at night, but not during the day. I don't want to feel sleepy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't see that with our liquid magnesium when people take it through the day, because remember what I said about ATP?
Yes.
You need the magnesium to make your ATP energy. So you do need to take it in the day. The body works it out. It really does work it out that, okay, I'll give you energy during the day and I'll calm you during the night. But the way people talk about magnesium is for sleep or this or that, they're talking about it as if it were a drug.
Yes.
But what I'm talking about is if you take it gradually through the day, you give your body the chance to utilize it the way it wants to use it in the 600 to 800 different enzymes in everything in the body. Getting around to the sugar business, what we found with our customers is after a couple of months of taking REMAG, they'll start saying, oh, I felt so much better, this and that and this and that. But now I have a coated tongue, I have itchy ears. Women might say they had vaginitis. And what's wrong? The REMAG is making me worse or what? And we say, oh, this is good. Your body's immune system has woken up and you're starting to have yeast die off. The big thing about sugar is it creates yeast overgrowth. You feed the intestinal yeast with sugar, and the yeast are crawling up from the large intestine where they should be living. They're crawling up usually because of antibiotics, chlorine in the water, all the things that kill off the microbiome in the small intestine. And the yeast will come up and fill in the gap. And in the small intestine, yeast are in a thread-like stage. They're no longer the budding yeast in the large intestine. These threads, they poke holes in the small intestinal wall or lining, and they allow a leaky gut to occur, and you're absorbing yeast toxins. So I say that the sugar gives you dopamine. It's a reward. It makes you feel a bit high. But when you get yeast involved, then you get foggy. You get brain fog and fatigue. The toxins that are absorbed through the leaky gut, they start causing even psoriasis type symptoms with a chemical substance called zymogen. Yeast are producing alcohol, and so you'll feel a bit drunk. They're producing acetaldehyde, which is a poison and a toxin that we get in car exhaust and cigarettes.
Yeah.
So in my world, I say that most chronic diseases are magnesium and mineral deficiencies and yeast overgrowth. And if we can get those under control, then we have a fighting chance.
And the yeast overgrowth occurs because we're feeding our microbiome, including the yeast, sugar.
Correct. At any one time in the bloodstream, we should only have 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar. Above that, then the body, it's hard to metabolize. Where does it go? It ends up precipitating. This extra sugar can flood into kidneys, eyes, even the neurons and nerves. It floods in. The body tries to metabolize it. It ends up going into something called sorbitol. Sorbitol is too big to get out of the cells, and a buildup of sorbitol kills the cells, and that's causing the peripheral neuropathy that we see in diabetes. So sugar is a poison. What happened to me back in Canada, in Toronto, I did the Deanie Petty show. You remember Deanie Petty?
I do.
So I did a few shows, but they asked me to do a Christmas show because they found out or whatever. We told them I was writing a book on sugar. So they had me on at Christmas, and the audience was all a bunch of school kids. So I brought my props and I spooned out, here, kids, 10 teaspoons of sugar are in this can of pop. And 20 teaspoons of sugar are in this milkshake. And the kids were, oh. And what happened? The sugar lobby groups came after me.
Wow.
In such a big way. They would not stop. And that was in the late 80s. And so that's going back 50 years. Well, 50, 60 years ago, there was research showing that sugar was causing heart disease. And the sugar lobby groups and the manufacturers, they went crazy with this information. They buried it and they said, oh no, fat and cholesterol are to blame. So they pulled up some fake studies now that we see it. They fed some animals, they fed rabbits rancid cholesterol and said, oh my goodness, the cholesterol is building up in their arteries. Why wouldn't it? Right. And with that information for the next 50, 60 years, they demonized fats and made us eat synthetic margarine, not eat egg yolks, all that horrible stuff. Now we know it's the opposite. And that's why we see so much about sugar now. You've been on about sugar for a long time, like I have, but it's only recently that everybody says, oh, actually, it's insulin resistance that's causing heart disease, because they're finally realizing that all the studies they did on cholesterol and all the statins in the world have not changed heart disease.
Exactly, yeah.
Hey, Food Junkies listeners. We're just going to take a quick break here to share with you something our team thinks could help benefit your recovery with food, body, or self. Thank you again for listening.
Hey, Food Junkies listeners, quick question. Have you ever followed a food or body rule so automatically that you never stopped to ask whose rule it was? This August, internal family systems therapist Vanessa Credler is running a 3-week workshop through Sweet Sobriety called Releasing What's Not Ours, Healing Food and Body Struggles Through IFS. Here's the idea. So many of the messages we carry about eating and our bodies, thin is better, food is love, clean your plate, weren't chosen. They were given to us by family members, our culture, media. You get the picture. In IFS, we call these legacy and cultural burdens, and this workshop is about learning what they are, how they get passed between generations, and why parts of us hold on to them so tightly, even when they're not serving us anymore. Over 3 live sessions, you'll learn to identify your own inherited burdens, understand what they're protecting, and in the final session, take part in a collective unburdening ritual together, letting go of what was never yours to carry. Vanessa is a clinical counselor, a certified food addiction professional, and an internal family systems therapist with real depth in trauma and intergenerational patterns. This isn't surface level. It's a real chance to shift your relationship with food and your body at the root. 3 Fridays, August 14th, 21st, and 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern, Saturday mornings if you're in Sydney. And if you can't make it live, all sessions are recorded, $50 US, and see the show notes for registration link.
Now back to the show. If you have enjoyed this episode, please let us know. We love to hear from you. Kindly leave us a review on whatever platform you listen to our podcast on. We love getting feedback from our listeners.
Just to go back to the yeast story, you were talking about that we have natural yeast, that then there's an overgrowth from the large intestine into the small intestine. I have 2 questions. One of them is, what about yeast that you ingest from external sources like Engevita yeast or nutritional yeast? Should we be avoiding those?
Some people, they're okay with it, but in some people, it does cross-react. So when I first started working with yeast overgrowth, I don't know if you remember, what was the show? There was a 90-minute show in Canada, a TV show. It might come to be back in the late 80s, 86. I was on a TV show with Dr. William Crook, who wrote the book on yeast. And it was 90 minutes and it was a call-in show. And they sent me a letter afterward and said they had gotten 80,000 calls that tried to jam into the show because people were so concerned about what we were saying about antibiotic usage, high sugar diet, stress itself can cause the normal budding yeast in the large intestine that is naturally there to help metabolize sugars and carbs that end up in the large intestine, to try to metabolize them and get rid of them. They have a place. You think of it, the corollary is mold and fungus in the forest, that a tree dies and molds and fungus break it down.
Yes.
If we didn't have molds, fungus, and yeast to break things down, we would be smothered in waste. So yeast overgrowth is huge, as I said, et cetera, et cetera. And the treatment, I said in the beginning, was avoid sugar, wheat, and dairy. And I got that from Dr. William Crook. Now we say sugar, gluten, and dairy. And by avoiding the grains, it usually gets rid of the baker's yeast part of things. I think sourdough bread, for example, is probably better. But there's this cross-reactivity, but also I think it's very basic. When you look at wheat flour, it's just a chain of glucose molecules. So you take a big chunk of bread in your mouth and chew it for a minute or 2, it tastes sweet.
Yes.
It breaks down into sugar. So we were trying to stop feeding the yeast. And I spent 10 years starving myself of sugar, wheat, and dairy, and it really didn't make a big difference. In my world, I grew up on antibiotics. I had a high sugar diet. Every night I'd eat a big plate of ice cream and a can of syrupy pears. It was horrible. And I was sick all the time. And that's what got me involved in diet and nutrition, because I said, I've got to do something better than this. So with avoiding, I spent 10 years avoiding sugar, wheat, and dairy. It didn't make, it made some difference. What would happen to me when I first got into the hospitals in my medical training, I started to get staphylococcal boils inside my nostrils. And I realized many years later, oh my gosh, my immune system was so weak from the yeast that staph, which is ubiquitous in hospitals, it just jumped into my nasal passages. Even to this day, if I start eating a lot of sugar, and I'm back to eating sugar because I created a protocol for treating yeast, to this day, I'll start to get a little itchy boil starting, and it's okay, back off.
Can you explain why, when people quit sugar for 10 years, they mostly said they feel much better, but you're saying it didn't make much difference. Why not?
Yeah, it did make difference, but I had to keep strict.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I didn't want to live my life just not having any dopamine pleasure at all. And what I did is I worked with Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces boulardii is a natural kind of antagonist to Candida albicans. It's a yeast itself, but it's used in the treatment of childhood diarrhea. So I thought, oh, they've got a lot of safety studies on that. I saw. So I worked with that, and inulin, prebiotic, humic fulvic, which is pre and probiotics, and it has minerals. And I put that together along with our picometer stabilized ion of silver. And silver is hugely important as an antimicrobial. It's still used in burn units where they'll put sheets of gauze in a silver solution and put it on people who have these horrible total body burns, because it's the only thing that will keep them from getting infected.
You said that quitting the sugar helped, but you didn't want to stay to that. So you found another way to work with the yeast. And
Correct.
There was a lot of talk, like maybe 20 years ago, about candida. And I don't hear it anymore now, except now a little bit with the resurgence of people talking about the microbiome, which would include yeast and candida. When you talk about yeast, are you talking primarily about candida albicans?
Yes. Candida albicans, definitely.
Okay.
And these conditions go through up and down periods. And unfortunately, with the microbiome talk, they're focusing on bacteria.
They are.
About SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, whereas there is small intestinal fungal overgrowth. And some people do talk about that, but it's fascinating because with the bacterial overgrowth, they often tell people to take antibiotics, which will make more yeast. And the other thing that I've been recognizing with the keto diet and the carnivore diet, paleo to a certain extent, is people think that the diet is what's really helping them with whatever condition. What I say is happening with these diets, you're avoiding sugar, you're avoiding grains, to some extent you're avoiding dairy. So you're treating yeast.
Yeah.
And I'll even hear the carnivore people say, the carnivore diet is the best because if I eat any carbohydrates, I feel so much worse. They are feeding their yeast again because the yeast will stay there. They'll stay dormant. And as soon as they get that carbohydrate, they'll grow and they'll give you your symptoms back. So by ignoring yeast overgrowth, people force themselves to stay on these very restrictive diets. And I really don't know how they get how can you get 450 to 600 milligrams of magnesium on a carnivore diet?
You're saying that the central ingredient that works in all these diets, carnivore, plant-based, is that they're not feeding the yeast. And that's the central thing that we have to address. We don't want to feed the yeast. Otherwise, we could eat any foods, right? Tell us a little bit more about how overgrowth of yeast causes sugar cravings, and then how you can address those so that you could potentially still eat sugar. Because you're speaking to an audience that is sugar-free because we have recognized that it causes devastation in our life.
Yeast, as I said, is necessary. It's a natural part of our environment. And when we feed it with sugar, actually, I think probably, Vera, it started with the antibiotic revolution,
Yeah.
where people take antibiotics and they're indiscriminate. They kill off good and bad bacteria, and they leave a vacuum. And yeast will just grow into a vacuum. So they grow up into the small intestine, cause a leaky gut. The yeast toxins are absorbed and cause symptoms. And I guess what in my personal N=1 experience, I said, I can't starve it. What am I going to do? And that's where I started coming up with, do I just use oregano? Do I just use all the antifungal herbs? And I worked with those for a while, and it's still, even oregano as a antifungal will kill off good bacteria. So that's where I just came upon the research about this yeast that pushes out candida and a few other ingredients, but especially the pico silver. Pico silver it's a stabilized ion of silver, and they've done studies to show that it actually stimulates the bone marrow to make naive stem cells, and they can go and help heal the leaky gut and do this and that. So I guess people would just have to experiment with, maybe I'll try my protocol and see how I feel.
I'm imagining this vision of the yeast that belong in the lower intestine crawling up into the small intestine, and then we eat sugar, creates the leaky gut, etc. And so now if we take your protocol, somehow that will stop that leaky gut from happening, or will not fuel the yeast from getting overgrown?
I should expand the picture a bit. Yeah. I don't want to imply that if you take my Flora Revive antifungal and my Pico Silver, that it's going to cure everything. Because what I start with is magnesium. And then I go to a multiple mineral that has stabilized ions. And that has an incredible effect on the thyroid. And the thyroid, when your metabolism is slowed down and your body temperature is lower, that enhances yeast overgrowth. So 9 of the 12 minerals in this Remite multiple mineral are necessary to grow to synthesize thyroid hormones. You don't have to wait until your thyroid dies and you give yourself thyroid hormone replacement. I say, if you take the minerals, I got off my 60 milligrams of Armour thyroid after 6 weeks on my multiple mineral because I was making my own hormones. And then you have to look at your vitamin D3 with K2. Vitamin D3 is so important. It's a hormone itself as well as a vitamin, and it's doing all kinds of immune system work in the body. You need your omega-3s. I don't use omega-3 fish oils because I think most fish oil is contaminated. I use omega-3 from algae, and I put in 2 fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A and vitamin E, just to round it out and make it more absorbable. That's the basis. I did add a zinc, copper, picometer ions around the COVID business because zinc is what really kills viruses.
Okay, yeah. So you're mentioning a bunch of other minerals.
The whole thing. Yeah, it's the whole picture of giving our cells the nutrients they need to be healthy.
I want to go back to the yeast and the sugar cravings because ultimately I want to understand how all of this creates sugar cravings to the point where we develop an addiction.
So I think of yeast as the Borg. Remember Star Trek? The Borg, they're an all-encompassing society and everybody thinks as one. The Borg is the yeast and they want to be fed. So they actually create cravings. You are feeding your yeast when you have cravings, in my mind, because once you start dealing with the yeast and getting rid of it, you don't have the sugar cravings. And I don't know, that's hardly scientific, but that's the experience that I had and I see with my customers now.
So when a person is experiencing sugar cravings, from your perspective, they have an overgrowth of yeast that needs to be addressed.
Correct.
Okay. And just starving the yeast, i.e. quitting sugar and refined carbohydrates, is that sufficient, or is that...
No, it's not sufficient because yeast have the ability to go dormant. Yeah. So they'll just, the monster yeast especially, they'll just hang out and wait for you. I haven't eaten sugar in 8 months. I'm going to have a dessert. I deserve it. And then they feel horrible. And it could be because they've fed their yeast. I've had yeast overgrowth people who've been bedridden with their yeast. They can't eat any carbohydrates. And we gradually support the immune system, support everything. Yeast are so much a part of our body. They are natural to our body that they are hidden from the immune system. The immune system is not going to attack a natural constituent. As I said earlier, when people take our Remag, a couple of teaspoons a day for a few months, their immune system wakes up to the overgrowth, to the excess, and starts killing it off.
Okay. But just to go back, if a person did want to starve the yeast and live a sugar-free life, you're saying it's dormant, but they're not going to go back to the sugar. And when they do, you're absolutely right. They feel horrible the next day. They absolutely feel horrible. I see that happening all the time. It motivates them to never pick up sugar again. So that is an option, is it not?
I chose that option.
But you're saying now that if you introduce your product, you could potentially re-engage in eating carbohydrates as long as you balance it off using your antidote.
Yeah. The balancer. We're trying to balance the body. We've with the stress creates cortisol. Cortisol feeds yeast. Our lifestyle has put us into this yeast overgrowth. Okay. And I'm just saying, let's balance it with something. Let's have a little help so that you don't have to be so strict or just suffer. I was with you all for 10 years and I know what it's like. Someone would come along with the dish and I said, just let me smell it. I would just smell these foods and that's all I could do.
But now you can actually eat the foods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you don't have the cravings afterwards.
No, I'll make buckwheat muffins, for example. And I'm putting in coconut milk and 6 eggs into 4 cups of buckwheat. And I'll put in some frozen blueberries. I'll put in some raisins even, and maybe a banana or 2. And I make about 50 muffins, and I'll have 1 or 2 a day with a lot of butter. And that is my treat. I think the body needs a reward, the serotonin. I'm a hugger. I'm out on my morning beach walk hugging everybody, and I get serotonin.
When you say sugar, you mean the sugar in fruits?
Correct.
Yeah, not added sugar.
Oh, no, I don't even add stevia to those muffins. I'm just saying a little bit of fruit. Whole fruit with the fiber is so much better.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Yeah.
And you mentioned carrots.
Yeah.
I had a patient in Toronto. His mother brought him in, a 12-year-old boy. She said, he's getting these headaches, really bad headaches. So we went over, what's he eating? She started making him carrot juice. And that carrot juice was so sweet for him. It created this symptom.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just have to be careful. All this juicing business is
totally agree with you. So what this antidote is another type of yeast.
Another type of yeast, Saccharomyces boulardii. And yes, it is a type of yeast that neutralizes, it crowds out candida albicans. Yeah. So it must have something to it that attacks the yeast or pushes it away. And as I said, I found it from studies in South America on kids with diarrhea. And it helped them. I thought maybe they had yeast overgrowth, but it was safe for these children. And it's widely used. You'll find it under yeast therapies. But the way I put it together with the humic fulvic and the inulin and the pico silver really seemed to hit the mark.
I am interested now in how this containment of yeast with the antidote, how is that also bringing in the magnesium, which you're saying is so integral?
Oh, so my story about when you take a Remag, the immune system kicks in and we support it. There's also interesting work. I forget which book I put it in, maybe one of my sugar books, that in order to metabolize glucose and sucrose, you need, 27 molecules or 28 molecules of magnesium. But to metabolize fructose sugar, you need 56 molecules of magnesium. So that to me means that sugars are using up magnesium in order to be metabolized. And that brings up the whole fructose business. Fruit sugar, remember, 25 years ago now, high fructose corn syrup. Oh, it's natural. It's from corn. And that killed anyway, it kills a lot of people. Yeah. There's The Bitter Truth. It's a video.
Robert Lustig, yes.
Yeah, Lustig's work. And that really opened people's eyes to the fact of fruit sugar. It's not metabolized the same way as glucose. And in the intestines, the microbiome deals with the fruit sugar in a certain way. And if it doesn't, if the microbiome is out of balance, that fruit sugar ends up going to the liver and causing fatty liver disease. So people who say, oh, I've got a cookbook, or the plant-based people especially, they'll put their sugar recipes with using a ton of fruit and fruit juices in the first chapter, because it's hard with the plant diet to make it really tasty. You have to really use your spices and your sugars.
Yeah.
So we got really too focused on fruit. I've seen blog posts or more like TikToks that say, I think you should be eating 16 bananas a day.
Oh my God.
And when you do the math on the amount of sugars, start reading labels. Someone was showing me yesterday this, I don't even want to say the name, but it's got 30 ingredients, a lot of fruits, all organic. They're really pushing, we're organic. Even though organic labels can say organic, even though if it's up to 80% organic, the rest can be poison. So it's being marketed. They're putting all their money into marketing through celebrities and influencers. And I looked at the label and I said, it's got 2 teaspoons of sugar in every dose. And what's that going to do when, I don't know if I said already, the body only has 1 to 2 teaspoons in the bloodstream at any one time. So any extra is an overload and it gets dumped where it shouldn't be.
Yeah. What about weight gain? How does magnesium and yeast overgrowth cause weight gain? Magnesium deficiency and yeast overgrowth.
The interesting anecdote there is that when they want to fatten cattle, they'll give them antibiotics. And that means the antibiotics are causing yeast, and the body retains water to dissolve, to try to neutralize or try to dissipate the toxins from yeast. And all that weight growth is fluid retention. Here's the fluid retention test. If you can't do this, just curl up your fingers tight.
Yeah.
If they are out here because they're swollen and painful, that means you've got fluid retention. And that can be the way I check my sugar intake. I went to Costco yesterday, so someone said, take the... And the next morning, if I've developed inflammation from what I took, my fingers would not curl. So that to me is the way to test for fluid retention. The body is trying to dilute these toxins. It'll put toxins into fat cells. The fat cells say, we need more fat cells. So the fat cells grow. So it's this vicious cycle.
Getting to your sugar-free plan and your sugar-free book, Detox, can you tell us what you do? It sounds like you probably use magnesium.
I think knowledge is power here, because when people are feeling addicted and, I have to have sugar to feel good, there's a mental drama going on. And I think the books that I write, I try to give people the information. This one is Detox Your Body.
Yes.
I did 3 sugar books. They made me take a picture, the recipe book.
Yeah.
I think if you can make a case and intellectually people say, oh yeah, sugar does this and that. Maybe I should. You have to get your mind in the game first. If you approach a sugar-free lifestyle and you're constantly contradicting yourself, it's not going to work. There's so many ways to look at this. I didn't even get to say this. I'm going to throw it in. Did you know that sugar, glucose sugar, and vitamin C are both transported on insulin?
No.
So if you eat a lot of sugar,
Yes.
then it will take up your insulin transport receptor sites and won't transport vitamin C. So that's why when you eat a lot of sugar, you get sick, because your vitamin C is not in the cells to act as an antioxidant against the waste materials that happen due to just normal metabolic function. And it's not there to make collagen. Vitamin C is necessary for collagen production. And that is where vitamin C makes your arteries strong. If you don't have vitamin C, then you get into heart disease. And that's where I think the sugar business, not business, but the sugar research showing that it caused heart disease was linked to vitamin C deficiency. The other thing that a lot of people don't know is humans don't make their own vitamin C. Humans, apes, and I think guinea pigs, they don't make vitamin C. A million other species make their vitamin C. Mice in research labs are constantly making vitamin C and contradicting all the mice studies. Humans are told, oh, you only need 90 milligrams of vitamin C. Everybody should go back and look at the Linus Pauling work. Linus Pauling was not just telling us to use vitamin C to prevent the common cold. He was working on heart disease. And he said, weight for weight, humans need maybe up to 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C. And with the huge epidemic now of heart disease, I'm really encouraging people to take at least 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C as ascorbic acid. Anyway, that's the world of vitamin C, sugar, heart, immune system. It's all combined.
So if they come to you, what would you tell them? Because you've got a complex picture here. What's a simple way that you would do the diet of eating unrefined foods, and then you would add the magnesium?
In the book, I lay it out that you start with avoiding sugar, gluten, and dairy for about 3 weeks.
Okay.
And you add the magnesium, a B vitamin, a methylated B vitamin. I didn't mention that. And maybe the multiple mineral, and boost the immune system. And then you slowly add the Flora Revive, the antifungal, and the Pico Silver. Now, some people might just do the diet and dive into the Flora Revive and the Pico Silver, but I think at least doing the magnesium is going to be very important. 80% have no metabolic functions, and it's not been taught in medical school. I went to medical school. I didn't learn anything there about nutrients.
And neither did I.
However, in Dalhousie, our dean of medicine was a biochemist, and we had 200 hours of biochemistry, and there was a Krebs cycle up there. And I already knew about vitamins and minerals, and I thought, oh my gosh, magnesium and the B vitamins, magnesium again in the Krebs cycle. Oh my gosh. So it made sense to me that they were important, but they were being ignored. The tunnel vision in medicine is astounding.
So if somebody listening to this, you have a lot of books. Can you recommend the top 3 that the person should read to kind of get a grasp of what you've been talking about?
I start people on this book.
Okay. The Magnesium, the Missing Link.
Yeah. And you can get it on Kindle. Some of my books on Kindle are $0. And I have my own publishing company now, so I keep the price down. So I'd say I don't have the cover of the sugar book. It's a clinical, what do I call it? Let me just look. What is it called? Exposing Sugar Toxicity, a Clinical Perspective.
Okay. And then you just held up the book, Detox Your Body.
So the first one is the clinical book, and it's got many of the things we talked about. But I think the next best book is going to be the next one that's coming out on vitamin C. Because the two major nutrients are magnesium and vitamin C. And if we can saturate ourselves with those nutrients, we have a fighting chance.
So in closing, what has been the reception of your work in the medical community?
I don't know. I don't associate with doctors.
Okay. All right.
I don't, because when you look at even the number of people going to these medical meetings, I walk the hotel beach walk here in Maui, and I walk through some of the conference areas, and it's either medical or tech. And they will have tens of thousands of people at these meetings to learn about drugs and surgeries and tools that they can use. In the meetings I used to go to in the naturopathic world, we maybe a couple hundred people. It's really a losing battle, I think, for us to educate allopathic medicine. In my world, we do have practitioners who work with my formulas, but I made the rule right from the beginning that I try to charge as low a price as I could to keep the business going. And doctors say, I don't have a profit margin. Or not the doctors so much, Vera, it's their office managers say, you're not going to make any money by selling these. And I actually have had naturopaths say to me, my patients get so much better on your products. We can't make any money off my other products, so we can't carry them anymore. So it's a big battle.
And how can people find out more about you and your products?
My educational site is drcarolyndean.com. I have a weekly podcast. I do a lot of interviews. I have a lot of blogs. My store site is rnareset.com.
And that's where you can get your magnesium compound that you sell.
And up in Canada, we paid the huge sums required to register our REMAG, so you can get REMAG in Canada. You can check my RNA Reset website and ask for that address. You can still order from us in North Carolina, and we can ship to Canada.
One last question. It's our signature question. If you could tell a younger version of yourself something either about magnesium or yeast overgrowth, what would it be?
Wow. I think I wouldn't wait until I was 45 to learn that I was magnesium deficient. I feel better now at 77 than I did when I was 30 because I had so much magnesium deficiency.
And I bet many people listening will identify with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure being with you. And thank you for your work. It's very important.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group, I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.